Architectural Builder's Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. Yeah, I thought it was about 2 dozen. That's what I came up with, almost all of it on the airplane ride coming back. Because the logic to Brian was, he's looking for distribution. He's looking to get back in the United States. I'm looking to have a potentially reasonably exclusive relationship with a manufacturer of weather stripping. And on the way back, I realized, well, there has to be a selling point because it ain't going to be cost. It's going to actually cost more because it is. Because it may be considered a superior product. I think it could be easily argued that on some points that it is. But it's going to cost more because it's coming from the south of England. So
this closer does come with an arm.
What the real important difference here is the Parker door bottom works differently in that
is, correct.
Flexible arms? Actually, that was something I was going to ask, if I could interject. Was that part of the patent that PEMCO held? Did they used to have a flexible arm drop? Okay.
No, I'm sure that they have one that does that in terms of dropping evenly, but the arms is what makes this so interesting. And you know what? It is I believe it's on a 411M. I want to pull it up and look at it.
Dark bronze, light bronze, and satin.
411M.
Let me see what we keep on the shelf.
I have an image. There it is. I have an image. It's not really great, but I go into it in extraordinary detail in the video that I made. So what happens?
Great.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So what happens here is there are two of these. There's one at each end, and this area here is connected to the drop bar. So this is this. And when that plunger is pushed in, this is fixed. This has nowhere to go because of this flexible joint and this flexible joint, and it forces it down. So what happens is customers, so much so that I actually recently made a video that said, if your automatic door bottom is doing this, it's not broken, it's not defective, don't call us. Here's why it operates that way. And meaning the 4131 by PEMCO operates in such a way where when you depress the plunger, it drops down unevenly, kind of like one half of scissors. So what happens is when the automatic door bottom drops, okay, it drops down unevenly like that. So what happens is, this is the hinge side, when the drop bar encounters the floor, it can't go any further. That forces this end to come down. Now that can be argued as advantageous because when you have a typical door, wow. You have a typical door and the door is at 15, 10, 5 degree ajar. Do you really want this rubbing out across the floor? Well, you could argue that you don't. The issue with this design inherently is such that it will absolutely not contend with a situation where the floor is not level and it goes like this. So actually it may, but it sure isn't going to contend with this.
Okay.
So you don't have a flush floor, you've got a floor that's now doing this. So by the time this drops, which it may not reach, you probably won't get any drop at all, but now it's too tight over here. So I discussed that with Brian at length. Hey, it's advantageous. And basically, and Brian Parker has university higher education credentials as an acoustical engineer. So when he's brought in on jobs, it's to measure how much leaking acoustically is happening through a wall, through a door, which led him to design this automatic door bottom. So after discussing this with Brian at length about it dropping evenly, his argument is, and it's true in practice, it doesn't matter if this is wiping across the floor ever so slightly, because that's what a door sweep does anyway. And it actually isn't a big deal. Because it drops evenly, you're not going to get a customer calling saying this is broken, this is defective, because they expect it to drop evenly.
Right.
It will contend with a slightly out of level floor condition a little bit better, because you now aren't hoping for that 50-50 chance that it's either tighter on the hinge side or tighter on the lock side. It's just going to drop evenly. And there'll be some compression when it hits the floor, and it will still continue to drop. But what Brian would say is, if your condition is such that the floor is so out of level, you can try to mitigate it with a door that's cut parallel to the floor. Or at the end of the day, and it's what a lot of hardware manufacturers, all of them are going to say, you need to replace it with proper material. You know, you can't necessarily re-level a floor, and you may be able to install the 411M, the 411S, such that it's parallel. This is the M, such that it's parallel. No, this is the S, such that it's parallel to the bottom of the door. So you skew it on the bottom of the door a little bit. And if it's at the end of the day a problem, yeah, you know, it's, if you've got a worn, you know, intake manifold on a car, it's probably going to leak and you need a new one. So now,
is there a difference in the range, like, 10 degrees, 5 degrees when the PEMCO uneven, drops on one side versus when it drops uniformly? I mean, I imagine the plunger goes in around the same time. And I know in the video it says there isn't much space where it's going to drop, where it's away from the stops. So is there a difference between when one would start to drag? I know, obviously, you said the PEMCO one would drag because it drops down first, but does the actual engagement point change, at the opening of the door, so to speak, or closing of the door?
It does for a couple of reasons. It sure does based on the amount that this plunger is unthreaded from the housing. That's how you control how much drop. So that's slotted because you'll turn it counterclockwise, you'll draw it out, and it'll drop further to its maximum, which is about 9/16 on this.
Okay.
So that's one. Number two, obviously, how much drop you're going to get on the far side is dependent on how wide the door is.
Okay.
So
I hadn't thought about, yeah. That makes sense too. Okay.
Now, Brian, and PEMCO is great. There's nothing wrong with PEMCO. I just believe that this is a superior product for the points listed here. The first was the flexible arms, forcing it to drop evenly, and the fact that it is extremely easy to resize this in the field. You could take a 7-foot-long automatic door bottom, which you would never see unless someone was installing it on the vertical style of a door, which could be done. You could cut that down to an 18-inch length. You could cut the housing. You could modify the bar that's in here that links and ties the two lever arms together. That's back on the 411M, where we can see the lever arms. There's a rod that connects these two. That's what keeps them together. These are literally connected by a rod. It's hooked over, but it's only like 3/16, typical metal. It's like thick coat hanger. And the point of the matter is, you can easily disassemble this. There's a screw or whatever it is. The whole thing slides out. You can cut all of this. You then remove the rod I was just talking about. You cut that to length a little longer than you need because you have to curl it over. And I actually cut one in the video. So in the field, if a person wants to resize it, you can. if you order a 32-inch Pemco 4131 and you need to make it 30-inch, guess what? The factory's going to tell you it can't be done. Well, with this, you can. Because how many people actually measure it correctly? How many people actually measure it? And then if they measure it, is it correct? I just made a video on someone who insisted that it was a standard 3L wide door frame, and I had the door and the full concealed hinge for it. Turns out it was at least a 16th of not an eighth too big for his opening because he didn't measure it correctly. So this can handle it in the field better because you can cut it down. You can tear this thing apart and rebuild it, and I proved that.
Yeah.
Now, getting outside of that with other advantages, one thing in particular about this is it's very quiet operation. It's more of a has everything to do with those arms that are in there, in the sense that they're more sound deadening and they're very principle of how they operate.
Right.
If I've sold 1,000 of these automatic door bottoms or 10,000, one person will absolutely disqualify the product because when the door is opened, this shoots back up. And that makes a clanking sound in standard items. And that, like I said, to some people is really going to be offensive. And it just is sometimes. It's happened to me twice. One customer walked in and said, "Take this back, it's defective." It's not defective, it works perfect. Oh, it makes so much noise. Because what a lot of people do is they want to put it on a bedroom door. And that's awesome. Who doesn't, we all want it quiet. But when you open, if someone's coming in and out, you're going to hear that clank. Okay. So this is a more muffled sound. And it would be interesting if Brian would acoustically measure that compared to others. I don't believe he has. But speaking of STC, this is STC 46 right out of the box. It's tested to that. Now, that's not a very high STC rating, but what is the STC rating out of the box of a 4131? It's not listed anywhere. They have it as acoustically compliant, but what does that mean? I don't know. They don't. They ought to publish that. They don't.
Interesting.
Now, there are models that do a lot more, they do a far better job at muffling the sound when this comes back up. But from an acoustical perspective, Brian, because of his expertise, knows that the EPDM rubber, these little tiny fins, so what's really happening here is, and this is the only insert he has, these two little fins broken by this piece of aluminum, the ability for sound to penetrate through this synthetic rubber, this piece of aluminum and this synthetic rubber, that combination of rubber and aluminum is how he achieves that STC 46. So would I want this necessarily for brute, cold, sub-zero? Nah. I'd probably want a really big piece of sponge neoprene. But in many, many instances, this is going to work out really well, especially interior applications.
Okay. So you just said something I want to dive into. I know should I let you finish your thought?
No, I'm good.
So you mentioned sponge neoprene being superior for something cold, and I would have thought, what I would have said probably was silicone has superior weather protection.
Yeah, if you can get a foam type silicone, yeah, absolutely. And you just want something that's got hollow pockets, because like closed cell neoprene is like car tire. That's really good for keeping water out. But foam neoprene is not good for keeping water out because it's full of holes, but it's better for attenuation.
Okay.
And that would be where I would go. Silicone, I like when it's extreme high temperatures, like you'd find on the top of a power plant building in the southwest of the United States, where it's routinely triple digits.
Right, okay.
So silicone does a lot better with flexibility at high temperatures.
That makes sense, okay.
Yeah. So, but but the argument to go to this versus any other manufacturer's line is just simply what's listed here. It's these reasons. It's not perfect for all applications because, Brian says it's fire rated. It's just, if it's a UL door, he's not provided me a UL compliance. If it's a fire door in Europe, he's got it, but they're not looking for what's over there. But it's going to be unusual that, this is going to go on a fire door, but not unheard of for sure. Every time you have a hotel, you need fire rating to a certain degree. Okay.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And I imagine it's just a cost thing since he's got distribution more lined up over there, so he gets his certifications for there, and actually paying to have it UL tested here is a whole different animal.
Yeah, it would be several thousands of dollars. And he'd have to partner with somebody to do it. That's right. So when a bunch of people get together, the hinge guy wants his hinge tested, the closer guy wants his closer tested, and so on, and they pool together because it's north of $10,000 from what I understand.
Yeah, that's the same figure I've heard, and I heard that figure 10 or 15 years ago, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was higher.
Yeah. And this is another thing, very low closing force, less than 5 pounds. So in our code compliant life, if you're installing these on interior doors, which you likely are for sound transmission control to a certain degree, if this takes more spring power to close it than a ADA compliant closer, many won't work. So, you get over to something like, I am an unabashed fan of Reese. I love everything about them. And you get into their material. Now, what's nice about what they're doing is they actually have a catalog. They have a page in their catalog that's showing you what they're getting. Okay. So it turns out, Brian's basement, the basement on the PDB is the 521 by Reese. So let's look at a 521 and keep in mind what that Parker door bottom looks like. My goodness gracious, this thing is, bigger than my forearm. So it's larger. It's a lot larger. Yeah. It's going to be noisier. And I've had customers, I've sent them cut sheets. I sent them the quote. They're like, I love it. Send it all to me. Then they want to send it back because I didn't know it was so big. That's 2 3/8. I mean, it's really big. It's really thick is really the problem. And then the other issue you have to be mindful is NFPA 101 is going to tell you that you can't encroach into the space with surface-mounted hardware, and this can get you into trouble with a surface-mounted, so you have to be mindful of that. Next time you're in a hotel, if it's an automatic door bottom, it could be either mortised or it could be semi-mortised, because on the face of the door is going to encroach. It's going to encroach into, when this door is on its hinge and the door is out here, and that doodad is mounted here, you're now getting into that clear space. I mean, you already are with the door, but this makes it worse.
Okay, right, okay.
Because you got to have a clear opening of 32 inch.
Right,
so you're measuring from here over to here. So that's why you'll see full surface models mortised into the semi-mortised into the face of the door.
Okay. That's a new understanding for me. That's good. That's very good.
Yeah, well, it's, so when it comes to automatic door bottoms, you really have 2 primary types, and then there's derivatives. You've got full surface, and then you've got full mortise. Now, the full mortise is always going to be full mortise, except the derivative of that would be one intended for a hollow metal door, because this is literally meant for the inverted bottom channel of a standard steel door, which is generally 3/4. This is not going to work because your inverted bottom channel on a steel door is never going to look like this. Right. It's always going to look like this. So that's a derivative.
I just learned that this year, that there's a channel in the bottom of hollow metal doors. I didn't know that prior to this year. It's like, yeah. And then I started looking at them. I go, oh, look, there's something that you can slide that door bottom in right there. So
all you got to, or the guide for a flush bolt. All you got to do is reach, or the arm from a pivot. You just got to reach your hand down there, and just stick your fingers up. You'll see that there's that it's inverted, and sometimes it's inverted at the top as well. So on the full surface, you can also take these and semi-mortise them. And semi-mortising it would be really, it's actually quite easy in the sense that you can take your door and you can surface mount it, or you can take your door and you can mortise it. And mortising this is a router and a straight edge. I mean, it's easy. Lay the door on your sawhorses, boom, straight edge, and just route away. Too easy.
Okay.
And you mortise it to the right depth. I love that idea a lot, in fact, because you don't have this big thing hanging off of the
Okay, my apologies, sir.
base of the door.
Right.
But a lot of homeowners just can't handle doing carpentry like that because they don't own a router. They've never used one. They wouldn't know how to set it. Now, I'm also a big fan of automatic door bottoms being used as a belt and suspender approach. And here in Florida, or where you live too, and basically, you're just below the Pacific Northwest. I love a belt and suspender approach, and Reese has discontinued this, but Pemco still has theirs. Where did it go?
Or 230 volt.
I'm at 15 volts.
Oh, here it is. I went right past it. So you grab me this bad boy right here, the S252, and door swing in. I'm going to have a seal here. I love that. And then I'm going to take the grip cap, the hook strip, which is this. I'm going to mount it to the face of the door here. I'm going to have a seal right here. And we've run out of ways to hold your pants up because that's the belt and the suspenders. You're going to drop a mortised automatic door bottom in here. Believe me, when the rain is horizontal and it's triple digit wind speed, you're going to want all the possible safety you can. Because during Irma 2017, 2016, condos on the first and second floors were destroyed. Not destroyed, they had to be completely gutted. So not destroyed.
What's your email?
Because of water intrusion. And, would this have prevented it? Yeah, would have made it worse. That's for sure.
Right.
The problem with that approach is a lot of customers are like, boy, that costs a lot of money. It does.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, have you priced have you priced a case of Diet Coke lately? So,
right.
Or going to the movies. So, the problem with automatic door bottoms, though, on exterior applications where they swing in, you don't really have the ability to add a drip cap when they're surface mounted. And I really love drip caps because I happen to know, based on my experience, that a drip cap really helps keep the water from getting in. These are, so you can't add one of these to the top of a unit, but if you potentially semi-mortise it, you may be able to kick all that in. So when it comes to the inserts, it's really, this is what they call a security style, because that aluminum bar is like what Brian Parker is doing. But the idea is that it's, I could take something and I could take needle nose pliers and I can eat this away and yank that out. I'm not going to do that with that aluminum bar. Brush, if you have carpet and it does exist still, this is not going to work really well. You want brush.
Okay.
Because it's not going to compact. Never use vinyl unless cost is the absolute most important thing. And at that point, I'd be looking at the Pemco SA3 or their SA2 or their SD3. It's their economy model, but it's still very expensive. And these are just the cheapest thing possible.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. In that, I changed the sale last week from vinyl. You might have actually helped me with that and changed it to the polyurethane. So
polyurethane. Yeah, that's a first round knockout when it comes to polyurethane, because when you're in the Reese catalog, and I'll get there eventually. I should just Control F. When you read what it does. Now here in Florida, if you've got daylight, you've got ultraviolet. vinyl, you ever see cracked vinyl? Yeah, it's ultraviolet.
Yeah.
That's daylight.
Yeah.
So we have it all the time.
That is interesting.
Food processing plants will go for this stuff because of the sorry, where is it at? On fatigue. Where is it at here? More rear resistant, compression. Well, bacteria and mold and fungus can't grow on this material. It's here somewhere, or I was told that about polyurethane. But an easy way that I sell door sweeps with I'm sorry, that's polypropylene. Wrong page.
It's funny because I'm having flashbacks from polyurethane, like in fire hose, and the things you were saying line up is mildew resistance, bacteria resistance. Like, it's not saying it. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Right here. Now, it's the abrasion resistance is where I'm going to always sell one, because a client says, I need a door sweep, and they explain to me the application like a center hung door, and I'm saying, well, that sweep is going to drag on the floor all the time because they don't have a threshold, and they're like, that's okay, that's going to be fine because there's no threshold. And I says, well, you better use polyurethane because it's 4 times the tear resistant. I actually had polyurethane here about a month ago, a piece of it, and I tried to rip it. The only way I could actually rip it or tear it was I had to grab pliers in one hand. I couldn't do it with my fingers. I couldn't rip it with not that I could necessarily with vinyl, like tearing a phone book in half, but silicone I for sure could. Neoprene would probably, not closed cell, you wouldn't rip closed cell neoprene, but that's very inflexible. Tensile strength, abrasion resistance, very cold temperature. So it's stuff, and you don't, this is up your alley. What happens after a fire event? All your stuff's ruined.
Right.
Everything's ruined. Well, not your door sweeps that are made of polyurethane.
Nice. Very interesting.
So we're pro Brian Parker. We're pro Pemco. We're pro Reese. We're pro everyone. But at the end of the day, is advocating on behalf of the owner is what our obligation is. And I happen to believe that Brian's, in certain areas, his product is superior. In others, I wouldn't use it. I would like it if he had only polyurethane as an insert or offered other inserts, because some people want to see a giant piece of foam neoprene. People are just programmed to see it. Oh, that's not good because it's not big enough. Well, they don't make Lincoln Mark IVs anymore either.
This is the one, as I recall, I've seen some videos. Is this the one that you would say has the superior STC or
well,
369?
when it comes to Zero, if you're looking for STC, you're going to want to go to their catalog and actually look at their assemblies, because they have the hinge, the threshold, the perimeter gasketing, the door bottom, and they detail all of that stuff, and they've tested all of it. But a lot of customers are looking for this big, giant piece of neoprene. Right. And yeah, I get it. The downside of this is, well, in a surface mount, you can see the downside. It's a large piece of hardware. The upside, however, is that it does have these anti-squeak inserts because they know it's going to clank. It will drop to a maximum of 1 inch because that 9/16 is not going to cut it for a lot of people. They need a greater drop. But again, it's big, it's bulky. People don't normally have the ability to mortise it, at least your commoner. Here's a great example of semi-mortise. That's really easy. I could teach you how to do that in 60 seconds or less. Plunge router and a straight edge clamp to your door, 60 seconds or less. Yeah. And then it's all just more a matter of what best suits the application for what's being done. And Jessica's a great source because she worked at Pemco, and so as did Heather, but Heather was in a different area where she didn't work on product knowledge as much. And this is really showing you what's happening. And Brian would say this is fake news. He would say it's not necessary. He'd look at you right in the eyes and convince you that it's, yeah. This is because of the design. This is a side effect of the design, so they take that and they turn it into this is a positive. Well, what happens when your floor is that way?
Right.
What happens when your floor goes this way? What floor is perfectly level? So it doesn't work. It won't work at all. Brian's might work. Now, having said that, they do make automatic door bottoms that drop evenly for sliding door applications, for a pocket door. Zero makes them. Legacy makes them. And
am I having a flashback that you said you could use these Parker ones on the sliding door in one of the videos?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's ideal for it. Absolutely ideal. Low closing resistance. I mean, if you close that without a latch, the plunger is gonna push the door back open, as you would expect it would, because it's biased. It's under force. But an automatic door bottom, that technology, from what I've been told, it's almost 100 years old now. I was told that Dorbin in Cicero, Illinois, who my family's been selling since the 1930s, invented the product, and then what angered Dorbin about us is that we started selling Pemco, and apparently there's bad blood because Pemco, according to them, copied their design. Now that's a check written by Stanley Howard Sr., my great-grandfather, to Dorbin in 1945.
Pretty cool.
Took a 6% discount, paying it within their terms, net 10.
That's awesome.
That's the order in which you mail the checks. Who's giving you this?
Right. Wow.
I think Avenue State Bank is still in business in Oak Park. Been there countless times. My great-grandmother would come to the store once a day, and all she's doing is taking the bank. Just coming, picking up the deposit, and going back home. Lackawanna 0825.
Look at that. Pretty cool. Yeah, it's interesting hearing that, because it's not uncommon for someone to create a product and then someone else to do something similar and then there to be bad blood. On my side, that's the same exact thing that happened with Ansel and the Globe Tech fusible links. Ansel was buying it from Globe for a while, and then Ansel started making their own that were the same design, and now Globe is upset with anyone that sells Ansel direct and buys their link. So it's not uncommon, apparently, for have this happen all the time.
7214 Belmont, and I am sure that I have a picture. Let's take a look here since I've gone down memory lane.
Yeah. Company history, maybe. I know I've delved into some of these too.
Look at that.
There it is.
Look at that building facade. That's my great-grandmother and her mom, my great-great-grandmother. I have a picture of 5 generation where she's the oldest and I'm the youngest. Let's see what that looks like now. 72.
Oh, right there.
Yeah, they must have changed well, who knows if they actually changed it, but they may have.
Angle of the camera too. Interesting.
That storefront may have changed. Well, anyway.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't 7214. Well, it says right there. Who knows? So that's so funny. That is so funny. Terry's thinking about moving back to Chicago, and I'm thinking we're going to open up a small location there. Yeah, that's Mimi, my great-grandmother. Great-grandmother.
Wow.
That's Grandma Shaw, her mom. So the automatic door bottoms. Now, I guess one thing to mention why they're so awesome is because in a lot of instances you have a door. And you have a threshold, okay? Door swings out. What do you usually have behind the door in a home? Well, you obviously have a floor, but what you usually have is a rug.
Mm-hmm.
A door sweep? No good. A shoe left here? No good. You give me an automatic door bottom out here where every time I go to open the door, it snaps back up in place. It's kind of drawn weird. But it snaps back up in place so it clears the rug. That's a win.
All right.
That's a win.
Okay.
I've torn up stuff down here because my kids left their shoe and I just kept pushing.
Oh, really?
Kept pushing the door. Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's that instance of, the insert might just rip off.
Well, it will. But when it tucks back up in the housing, you have no real fear of if the door will naturally swing over this, and you can mount the bottom flush and into the closed position. You've got the drop to hit the sill, the threshold, or the sill condition, whatever it is. Nothing beats it. Now, Pemco does have a spring-loaded item that flips down. I always forget that part number. It's neat. It's a door sweep, and it springs kind of to like a 30-degree angle when the door opens. But these are great for that. They just really are.
Very good. All right. This has been some good info, Rich. I really appreciate it. This has
Awesome.
been a very good, like some of the stuff I sold it on was some of the stuff you told me, and I've gotten some more info. So, yeah, this has been a great review. Really
I had a guy that worked for me back in the late 90s, and he was a salesman. And what I remember about him was he would look at me and say, "Rich, stock," he would say. And what he meant was, don't order anything. Sell what you have in stock. Tell the guy he doesn't want that. Sell what you have in stock.
Right.
Well, that's true, but we don't stock it unless we believe in it. And that PDB, I believe in that. And I believe in everyone's product, but that PDB I believe in. And because I've made them, I've met the young man who's building them. I've met the young lady who's sliding the EPDM into it. I know Brian. I know the guy I know the guys at the extrusion plant that's doing all of his work. So I know his wife, lovely lady, his son, he's got a daughter, the whole 9 yards. So there's a connection there. It just happens to be a product that objectively checks a lot of boxes. So that's why that's why people should take a look at it, even though it costs a lot more money.
And it's fantastic that does come across in all the videos that you put up, but it's reinforced with this as well. So wonderful recap. Alrighty.
All right, my dude. I'll talk to you.
Until next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.